So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio, and today is Tuesday, August the 29th, 2023. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you in the queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and questions, because that makes this your show. And we'll give Michael a moment to dial in and say I'm making some changes on the website, and the website is running really slow, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but I keep working on it. And at this time, I'm going to welcome Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here, that we get to keep having this conversation about first century Aramaic forgiveness and all the tools that correlate with that genius piece of work that arrived on planet Earth about 2,000 years ago. Would have been nice to have been here personally to welcome it, instead of having to take all these years to understand it by going through the filter called the English language, which is a pretty bizarre filter when you compare it to the Aramaic. But we've arrived at a place where we're getting a deeper and deeper understanding on an ongoing basis. Personally, I feel really blessed that we've had the opportunity to focus the last 50 years on this amazing, amazing material that opens a space so wide for healing that it's just beyond comprehension. And of course, the objective of everything that we do in this work is to upgrade the state of being, the state of health, and to support each person involved in doing that work. And of course, the core of it, if we go to the opening words in the book of John, where the Greeks tell us it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. In Aramaic, that's not what it says at all. But what it does say is, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. And as you realize that, you realize that literally your thoughts are the energetic patterns that on a quantum physics level create your physiology and your world. That's what the quantum physicists are telling us. That's what medicine is telling us. That's what truth points to. And if you want to continuously upgrade your health, then the first and most important thing you can do, if you're going to change one thing, is continuously monitor and upgrade your thoughts. Now, there are lots of ways to monitor your thoughts. You can do it just by observing your language. The language you use will tell you a whole lot. You listen to people who introduce ideas of violence, and what you know is those people are about generating and creating violence in their world. You listen to people whose conversation is about, experiencing oneself as love and moving forward in the world as the presence of love, and you realize that that person is about something other than creating violence. There was someone who wrote a book, and I wish, when I wrote Why Is This Happening to Me Again and checked to see if the title was available, I was so delighted because it was such an obvious title for a book. Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And there's another title that I wish I had thought of and written the book, but I didn't. But somebody did write it, and it's a good book. It's called You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. I wish that had been my title. But I'll cancel my goal for that and recognize that if you play the game, now, no matter what the stimulus is, you can blame everybody in the world for all the negative thoughts you think, all the pissy thoughts you think, all the angry thoughts, all the frustrated thoughts, all the blame thoughts you think. But guess who's thinking them? And guess who gets to live with the physiological effects of it? Yes, your mind will generate pictures about how it's all about somebody else, and don't hold me accountable, don't make me look. But if you don't start looking at the way you avoid your life, if you don't start looking at your negative thoughts, it's a way to destroy your physiology. So the first step in health is to continuously monitor and upgrade your thoughts. Really, literally looking at every thought you think. And if you find yourself thinking a nasty thought, you say, well, but I'm thinking that nasty thought about Bill. Well, guess what? If Bill's not resonant with your nasty thought, you're the only one that's going to get the impact of that nasty thought. You and anybody else that's in resonance with it. You can pretend it's about somebody else, and you can point the finger at them, and you can point the breath at them, and you can rage at them all you want. But guess who's getting the chemistry of the thought? Literally, that's what Bruce Lipton, cell biologist, look up some of his work. Go to YouTube. There are lots of videos by Bruce Lipton. What he's showing as a cell biologist, is when you think a thought, that thought produces a molecule. And that molecule literally circulates around in your structure until it finds a receptor site that matches. And when it finds a receptor site that matches the thought, that's in resonance with the thought, then it lands on the receptor site. Landing on the receptor site creates a thing we call emotion. When that energy connects with the receptor site, there's a flash of energy that is emotion. And if your emotion is in the pits, then you know that your creative process is in the pits. Doesn't matter whose picture's in your mind, who you're focused on, who you're looking at, who you think you're thinking about. When that neuropeptide lands on your cell, the reason you're feeling disturbance, pain, upset, fear, rage, guilt, grief, condemnation, gossip, slander, whatever it is because that neuropeptide containing a disintegrated thought just landed on a cell, and the cell is saying, ouch. Stop the pretense and stop pointing it at everybody else. What kind of thoughts do we need to face? What ultimately has to happen? Carl Jung said, the demise of society will not be from a physical threat, but rather from a mass delusion, a collective psychosis. Quote, greater than all physical dangers are the tremendous effects of delusional ideas, which are yet denied all reality by our world-blinded consciousness. And you remember in the codependence workshop, we talked about all the pseudo-solutions the mind's got. If I could just blame you, if I could just make it about somebody else. Jung goes on to say, our much vaunted reason and our boundlessly overestimated will are sometimes utterly powerless in the face of unreal thoughts. Remember that one of the solutions is obfuscation. Mind will become an expert at spewing puke on whoever's present to avoid dealing with what's real in the moment. Bringing a pointed thought disorder out, and all of a sudden, well, let's talk about 47 other times when it happened. Obfuscation, it's a way to not deal with the simple fact that something's off base and we need to look at it. It takes great courage in our minds, our generations and generations of who knows what. But just kind of take a look at your power person if you're not sure. And it can be a bitter pill to swallow. But there's no escaping that bitterness if you're going to clean up your life. And recognize that when you're feeling it because it is in you, not because of what somebody else did. You know, we've read several times over the years, and it feels appropriate to read it again, from Francois Fenelon. This gentleman lived, I'm not sure exactly what year this was written, but he lived from 1651 to 1715. And here's what he said: as the light increases, we see ourselves to be worse than we thought. We're amazed at our former blindness, as we see issuing forth from the depths of our heart a whole swarm of shameful feelings, like filthy reptiles crawling from a hidden cave. That's not pleasant stuff to feel, but there comes a point where you have to grow up and become an adult and go, I'm feeling it because it's in me. Not because somebody brought it up in me. And if I don't like it, in me is what needs to be changed, not the person who brings it up for me. Fenelon goes on and says, we never could have believed that we had harbored such things, and we stand aghast as we watch them gradually appear. But while our faults diminish, the light by which we see them waxes brighter, and we're filled with horror. Bear in mind for your comfort that we only perceive our malady when the cure begins. In other words, it's a wonderful thing because you're becoming aware. And when you become aware, you can actually change the game. Wake up time. And so the tool applied, should you choose to use it, should you choose to be responsible for the output of your own mind, is called forgiveness. And what forgiveness does is it collapses the output of the mind. It's got nothing to do with other people, got nothing to do with letting other people off the hook. So there's a work to be done for each and every one of us. And if you want to experience a peaceful world, then everything that's unlike peace must be faced and ultimately removed. And one of the things that this requires is looking at the generational patterns. Note that when you're under stress, the things you do will be exactly what your power person did to you that you hated the most. That can be a tough nut to swallow. If you haven't started to use the forgiveness tool as yet, we invite you to go to our website, whyagain.org. And if you go to the upper left-hand corner of the page, the home page, there's a link that says Start Here. If you click the Start Here link, that will start to walk you through everything that we know about forgiveness. Ultimately, if you really want to move through it, there are about 20,000 pages on that website. And that's what, if you're really interested in moving through it, will act as your guide. And of course, we're here 5 days a week to answer questions and to support you in that process. Healing is not Dr. Feelgood. Most people don't want to go there, but it can be done with understanding. And as you do that, then you are restored to the truth of who you are. And the truth of who you are is that you're created of the essential nature of love. Whenever there's hostility or fear, It's a cover for the presence of love. And of course, one of the games that a lot of people play is they'll cut off somebody else's head in order to appear a head taller. When one chooses to degrade another or makes the decision to degrade another, it's because that individual doesn't want to look at the truth inside of themselves. Becomes your pursuit, then more and more opportunities to learn the truth will come, and sometimes they'll come disguised as opportunities to learn forgiveness. Sometimes they'll come disguised as frustration and anger and rage and fear. You know, everybody's heard the saying that love is the answer. But who wants to do the hard work of facing the parts of themselves that are unloving? And so often people will, under the guise of love, unconverted, continue on their violent path of fear, intimidation, and destruction in the name of love. When we're told that Yeshua said you're supposed to love your neighbor, if you look at the Aramaic passage there, it doesn't have anything to do with loving your neighbor. It has to do with you being the space of love in the presence of your neighbor. It's a major piece of work. The most profound and powerful way that I have been able to uncover to consistently and persistently open the unconscious dynamics in the mind, collapsing the hostility and fear-based dynamics of the mind on a regular basis. When that becomes a habit, then the fear-based mind tends to begin to disappear. And when the fear-based mind begins to disappear, it is replaced by the natural mind of man, and that is the mind of love. The habit mind run by power person dynamics is not your best advisor. In fact, because that habit mind is based in fear, it's something to literally be cast out in the ancient, and if you think in terms of the ancient teachings. Perfect love casts out fear. They were talking about fear literally as though, in that context, it were a demon. So when do we wake up to our purpose and recognize who we are as human beings? And then begin to listen to that internal capacity, that inner voice, was referred to as the still small voice. And it was referred to as a still small voice because in the presence of a raging, grieving mind, it's a voice that can hardly be heard. Each and every one of us is designed to live with love present in our minds and in our physiology 24/7, 365. And 2,000 years ago, when they asked the man Yeshua, well, how do you tell where somebody's at? He said, just look at their fruit. Look at the results. Are they living in fear and hostility continuously, or are they living in love continuously? Look at your generations. I'd offer that the purpose of life is to heal us, to show us what we're holding, and give us the opportunity to work through whatever it is that we're holding that's unlike love. This energy converter called the mind will build images of others out of whatever we have moving inside of us when there is upset or disturbance in the mind. If we live in a state of blockage to truth where we call lies truth, you made me mad, then we prohibit the mind from ever being able to see truly. And when you associate what you're feeling with what the image is in your mind, then the tendency is to play the blame game. As your interest in truth grows, you start to look within and clean up what's going on inside. You realize that forcing another to change so you don't have to feel the effects of your own thought is pretty futile. So ultimately, one must work through every assumption that was a lie. Face from that space of being with love present, one by one, the projected results of a mind based in the past in fear and hostility. And ultimately, you get to transmute every projected lie. Not just of your own life, but the generational lies and prejudices. By questioning every energy that you engage in that's off the mark, you get to upgrade in stages everything that is unlike love in you. And as that book title I mentioned earlier said, you can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. You've got to be continuously on guard, upgrading your thoughts, upgrading. You want a youth instead of age? Every degrading thought puts another wrinkle in your structure. And ultimately, this work requires facing, dealing with, and healing every thought disorder in the bloodline. Literally opening a space of healing for the generations. When you give up living by beliefs and you live by truth, beliefs are nothing but thought complexes. They're just a series of thoughts that are tied together that support a particular conclusion. But if there is hostility or fear of any kind involved in that game, then the conclusion, is always false. Healing means serenity comes to the mind and the body. And you get to extend that serenity to everyone. To literally become a healing force in the world is one of the objectives of this particular body of work. So recognizing that perception, the output of the mind, is a construct, it's a series of pictures and sensations generated by the mind to show us the mind's unique interpretation of what's going on in the world. If you find a theme in what's going on, then recognize that theme is about you. Suffering, anger, fear, rage, all of these emotions are constructs, structures that are often passed on from previous generations of the mind, nothing more than that. The world resonates those energies in the mind, but they have to be in there to be resonated in the first place. So everything we see in the window of perception is an interpretation of our mind, and each interpretation tells us more about the content of our minds in the world that we have been taught or believe that we're looking at. If it isn't love, it isn't out there, it's in here. Prevailing interpretations of reality generally come from the king. You notice we have certain people in our culture that are acting more and more like kings every day and have proclaimed they want to be kings. And the king wants to have people believe and live a certain way. And it's not usually for the benefit of those people. So it's power that sets up the prevailing realities of the day. The objective of this work and the direction we're supporting in the world. There's a quote that I ran across from a person named Shannon Alder. Your perspective on life comes from the cage you were held captive in. Perspective on life comes from the cage you were held captive in. If you were held captive in a cage of hostility and fear, then your perspective is probably going to be pretty regularly hostile or fearful. One of the big symptoms of that is blame. So often we see power restricting. No, you're not allowed to see that. You're not allowed to read that. You're not allowed to look at that. And what do we have? We have someone trying to control people's minds. Robert Heinlein wrote a book called Stranger in a Strange Land. Another book of his goes back in the 1940s. It's entitled If This Goes On, and he says, when any government or any church for that matter undertakes to say to its subjects, this you may not read, this you must not see, you are forbidden to know. The end result of that is tyranny and oppression, no matter how holy the motives. Mighty little force is needed to control a man whose mind has been hoodwinked. Contrariwise, no amount of force can free a man. Pardon me, no amount of force can control a free man, a man whose mind is free. Not the rack, not fission, not bombs, not anything. You can't conquer a free man, he says. The most you can do is kill him. And, here we are in America in an age, once again, of book banning. Isn't that interesting? Robert Heinlein really had that one down pat. And so what's happening in your world with this work? Are you putting the pen to the paper? Are you using the app? Is there any way we can support you? Kind of exciting challenges are you having? Our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show directly, and then if you push 1, that raises a hand in the control panel, and Jeannie will know that you want to talk to us.
We do have a hand up.
So, Ms. Jeannie, do we have anybody?
That you said you wished you had gotten the title of at the beginning?
You can't afford the luxury of a negative thought. I just thought that was such a great title. And, you can't, because the thoughts become our chemistry and our physiology. At least you can't if you want to be healthy. So you've got a hand up, sweetheart?
We do, and it is a voice
great. Let's
from
say hello.
Michelle 248. You're on the air.
Hey there, guys. Hi, Michael. Hi, Jeannie.
Welcome. Long time no hear. How are you?
Good. I just got back from 5 weeks in Mexico. I had told Jeannie I'd want to call in about something that happened right before I left, and it was kind of interesting, and so I just wanted to process it a little bit with you guys.
Great. How can we support you?
It was kind of like an observation, and I don't know if I'm downplaying it or what, so let's just tease it out.
Okay.
In the middle of July, maybe, I came home one day to find out that my laptop had a black screen. And I took it to Best Buy. I have a subscription to Geek Squad. And basically they told me this rare occurrence that my computer crashed, lost my hard drive, don't have any backup, and basically lost 20 years of pictures and data of my life.
Ouch.
So this was so like unthinkable that this could happen, and it was my own responsibility and lack of responsibility to protect this. And the first couple days were rough because it was more like shock. I mean, it's the death of something, really, in my estimation.
Yeah, that's
and
major.
When people talk about the burning house, what do they grab, right? Photo albums.
Right.
And there was the first night, I remember I woke up in the middle of the night crying. I didn't even know until I woke up and I was crying. And it was interesting, though, but beyond that first couple days, I think that like 10 years of forgiveness work allowed me to like survive, which is something that I think would like devastate and destroy most people. And I'm using those words, and so that I'm hearing myself going, am I? And that's kind of what I'm like wondering. If I don't think about it, I'm okay. If I focus too hard on, I can generate a lot of fear. But then also I wonder a spiritual lesson about detachment. And you know what I had to do with Mark, and so now it's like a different layer. And the funny thing is, I had a friend helping me declutter and downsize and trying to help me minimize like my stuff. And this happened like right in the middle of like cleaning out the garage. And I'm like, energetically, what the hell is going on here? Because my previous life is dismantled. And I know that ultimately it's a good thing intellectually to let go. And, you know, how many times have I really ever looked at those pictures? Never once in 20 years. And the key ones that I've ever had, right? I post on Facebook, so I've got, it isn't like I never have a picture of myself or me or the kids. And technology was in my favor because everything before 5 years old is on film in 35 millimeter, and I've got books and books of stuff.
Right.
So it's just interesting, the Mark era, the 20 years of Mark is wiped, like the week after he died. Not even. So it's like all just very curious to me. So, I mean, I was super upset, and I tried to work through it, but then also I look at it like, God, you should be more upset because that's like huge. So, I also thought that if I put some type of request out there and explain to folks about what happened, then I'm sure I could get, you know, all the pictures back from different people who they've touched, whether it's my trips to India, Peru, or the kids' friends who have, like, pictures of them when they're little.
Right.
I just kind of wanted to share that and maybe talk it out loud.
Okay. One of the first thoughts that comes, and this is, you know, solution possibility, you know, there are recovery services that can take a dead hard drive and take information off of it. Have you looked into that?
Yeah, I know. You know, it was a good suggestion and another person gave me as well. And by the time I learned about those options, I had already had them wiped and reinstalled like get a computer back, and I didn't know that that was something that maybe like a higher level of engineering than Geek Squad would acknowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know. They assured me they've, did like data recovery points, and those weren't available, and so I kind of just accepted their word on that versus trying a Hail Mary sending my computer.
Yeah. Yeah, you reused the same hard drive.
Mhm.
Ah. Okay, well then that's option so. So the next place that I would invite you to go is what I assume you've done some forgiveness work around it. What's been the focus of your forgiveness work?
I feel it's interesting because it's more about like I was irresponsible or naive, and
So there's some blame in there?
Yeah, and the consequence
Have you done worksheets on blame?
No.
Okay. Well, there's your pen. Now you got your pen in hand, right? We're going to take notes, right? Worksheets,
okay,
self-blame.
Sure. Hey, listen, but wait, can I tell you this part about my son? I asked him, and he's like, I don't care. Like, no big deal. Like, I'm devastated, and he's not.
Yeah.
So
well,
like,
he doesn't have the same goals you have.
Who am I holding myself accountable to?
Yeah. So notice that he doesn't have the same goals you have, nor the same thought disorders you have. It sounds like you'd like him to join you in your suffering, like you'd like him to have the same pain and suffering as you would. You might ask yourself how sane that is. Are you breathing?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm looking for a piece of paper to write.
Breathe.
Yeah. So, I guess the goal, the first goal that comes up is to be perfect, right? Because it wouldn't be a mistake.
Good starting point. And a good mind shifter to help you to surface the thought disorders underlying that might be, if you have your pen handy,
Mm-hmm.
I have always been responsible for every detail of my life. Especially when it comes to preserving my past.
So the first part of that sentence brought up some, thoughts where I was in resistance to that, and I can see like how I take care of myself. I'm certainly not perfectly responsible. But then this part about, especially when it comes to preserving my past, that's where I feel like there's some dilemma, in the sense that like there's a part of me that feels compelled to preserve the past, and the part of me that knows that that is folly.
So that's what you want to write on the right-hand side of the page.
Does that even make sense, though?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's called a conflicted mind. Sure. Makes perfect sense. That's why you're doing a mind shifter around it, to allow those things to surface so that you can step back. Remember, one of the objectives of the work is to become the thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. So to be able to step back, so as you write that, and you can now, as you deepen, I would say with this one that you should take a block of time where your phone is shut off for at least 4 hours, and you just sit and write. And let yourself touch into all of the thought disorders that you hold around loss. and be thankful that your son doesn't have those same thought disorders.
No, this is, I'm glad that I kept it, like the commitment. I had told Jeannie that I wanted to talk about this, and I guess I'm ready now. So, I mean, I'll work on these things and revisit you guys when I get a little more clarity to provide some feedback or whatever.
Does that mean you're exiting?
No, it just means I'm acknowledging the support and my commitment to follow through. I have always been perfectly responsible for every detail, especially when it comes to preserving my past.
And then another mind shifter?
Well, luckily my paper has two sides. Go on.
You came to this big issue without paper. Is that big life issues?
Sometimes I show up without even knowing the questions that need to be asked, so it's just kind of letting it unfold. I was happy with the step to actually press 1.
Cool. So how about another mind shifter? And that one I would offer would be, it's safe and healing for me to live without memory or memories.
Well, that can turn up a lot. Actually, it reminds me
Because,
of
if you did that, go ahead, excuse me.
No, I'll tell you after.
So if you were to recognize that carbon-based memory, CBM, that's how we call it, carbon-based memory, wants it to live its life, though it's not alive, through you. And I shouldn't really say wants because it doesn't have a wanter, but that's what it's been trained to do. And to kick up a fuss if it's not getting what it's been trained that it's supposed to get. But what if you considered living a life where you were able to totally, completely collapse and throw that away, and then the option you had left was to simply live in the mind of God for eternity?
What if you forget?
Well, that's the idea. What if there was no reason to remember? What if you had a mind that was so profoundly, what's the word, gigantic compared to the one you rely on, the one with all its pain and turmoil?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you were turning to rather than the one that says, I want what I want when I want it. And spews pain if you don't get it. What if you just had a mind that was absolutely, totally, completely immersed in and connected to active present love and had access to everything that has ever happened in the universe directly?
That's super appealing. That sounds like a Akashic Records action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what the cheap copy of that is? Carbon-based memory.
Mm-hmm. No, it feels like reminiscence of old conversations with you and Rex, and right, being aligned in love in the moment, and then right, going through the battlefield of bullets, because everything that you need to be guided or know is provided.
Yes.
So the story that resonated when you said, "For it's safe and healing for me to live without memory or my memories." I had a client one time, a young college girl, and she was working as a CNA in a nursing home, and it was just a small unit of maybe 8 patients, and she was put there a lot, and they try to keep the same lady that came with for a while. And
they try to keep your voice cut out there for a second, Michelle. They try to keep the same,
like the workers, like, so she was consistently put in the memory unit so that there would be familiarity with the staff and the patients.
Sure.
So, you know, over time that she kind of like had her favorite people and befriended them because she would interact with them all the time. And so one day she said that this old lady had a very serious look on her face and asked her, she's like, I have a question. And the young girl said, okay, sure, what's up? And she goes, I can't remember. Can you tell me, was I a good person? And I started bawling in the therapy room. Like, the college girl was like, what the fuck? And I was just like, oh my God, for whatever reason, that just felt so sad to me. Memory of her life. So that's when you
like
said that.
Really
I'm like,
good
oh,
worksheet
there's more.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd go after that sadness and clean it out from my store.
I think my core fear isn't abandonment. I think my core fear is loss of meaning.
So I would do worksheets around loss of meaning after I did my worksheets on abandonment. Seeing as how they're the first brain cells, denial attach, it's not this, but since they're the first brain cells that came, I'd be doing some work around.
I say that because I always thought it was, and then I did like a deeper level of work with some folks and got some like deeper exploration. So, I mean, I can, and I also think that loss of meaning trumps abandonment. Which is, I mean, loss of meaning is like abandonment from everything, where abandonment is like the loss of the people.
That's why I suggested you do the abandonment work first. Notice that the core issue that you say you're talking about is focused in abandonment. The one you wanted to do first is focused in the one that you spoke of first. Loss of meaning is abandonment of everything.
Right. Okay.
The mind's always telling us. The mind's always talking about what its core issue is. And when I put the word not in front of it, that's a way that I try to hide that from myself. But the focal point still comes up. Good breath.
Well, yeah, those are my updates.
Awesome. Well, welcome home, and I hope your time in Mexico was fabulous.
Oh yeah, no, Alyssa flew out there for the last week, so I took her to all my my special places.
And how is she doing?
She's got some challenges going on. She recently moved to Grand Rapids, so she's been on her own before, but this is like a new independence that she's exploring.
Well, when you talk to her, tell her we're extending love in her direction, holding the space for her.
Yeah, I would definitely share that. I mean,
yeah. And if she needs any support, we're here.
A reminder of that. Yeah. I don't know if I'm the most effective person to support her right now anyway, on her brain self.
Are you saying that you've been giving her some opportunities to learn forgiveness, or has she been giving you opportunities to learn forgiveness?
Oh, totally mutual.
Oh dear, matching bags of garbage. How cool is that?
Right. My Dolby sound and what is Kodachrome color?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you spending the time to kind of process that with me and give me some new direction.
Delighted. Glad to be here. Holding the space.
So this is like, I don't know if you would ever remember this, Rex would, where every time that I went to Heartland over the last 10 years, or Heartland, Annex in Oak Island or
Right.
Florida or whatever, every single time I came back, there was dead chickens. It became almost like humorous because whether it was, family neglect or cunning wildlife, there was always some kind of chicken massacre. And nobody could keep the chickens as well as me, right? And Rex and I would talk about the death of different aspects and just how it manifests or whatever. So I was so excited yesterday because it was my first morning back and I went out to see my chickens. And when I went in the pole barn, because Son didn't collect the eggs as religiously as Mom would, and the broody hens hatched a baby.
Oh, cool.
So in all the years, that's never happened when I've gone away and come back. So I figured I must
new level of life unfolding.
Right. Something juicy.
Well, when you let go of the past, oftentimes that makes a space.
Yeah, I have a friend who's reminding me of that I would do well to let go of some things from the past. So I'm trying to support myself by getting other people to kind of give me a leg up on that.
Yeah. So remember, one of the, if you listen to the lesson, if you haven't listened to it recently, you might want to go check it out and give it a listen. From the Course in Miracles, What is the World? And actually, we used to have only a 30-minute piece on our on our YouTube channel, but we recently did, I don't know if you know, we've been doing a study group with a book study group in London, England, and we've been doing Why Is This Happening to Me Again for over a year, and we did some Course in Miracles work. And one of the lessons that we have a 2-hour video on in the Course in Miracles is What is the World? And in the context of this conversation, you might just jump on our YouTube channel and look at that. It's under Hear My Voice Book Club and What is the World? And one of the things that the Course talks about is, in fact, the opening line in that lesson is, the world is false perception. It is born of error. It has never left its source. And it will remain no longer than the thought that gave it birth is cherished. Perception is a skill made up by you to take the place of what the Creator gave you in creation. What if you chose, and this is a projection question, it's something that I started to work on about a year ago. What if you chose to live in a world without perception? If you trusted enough to let go of perception itself, the world that you made up. And that would make a space for the actual world of the Creator to enter your awareness. Could you find some willingness for that one?
I'm trying to conceptualize it, though.
Yeah, it's a tough one because we're trying to conceptualize it with perception.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's see. That's where we're going to be without perception. Let me see if I can perceive that. Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one.
So is there, would you say that's like equivalent to radical acceptance?
I don't know exactly what radical acceptance is, so I couldn't say that.
I just made it up.
Oh,
the idea of
okay.
acceptance,
Okay, well,
but like radically.
it's okay with me if that's what it fits.
Well, if you don't have a perception, that seems to me equivalent to not having a judgment.
Yeah, there wouldn't be any judgments if there was no perception, correct.
So then that seems like acceptance. And that seems like love. Those are all synonyms. Conscious and awareness, synonyms.
Works for me.
Okay, then we're on the same page,
And it
Michael.
would mean...
That's good for one.
And it would mean that you'd actually be living in the world the Creator created directly, rather than the intermediary you put between it. We all have, not you as an individual, but all of us have put between us and the world that the Creator created. So I'll leave that thought with you and hold space, and the show has just warned us that we're complete and it's going to cut us off in a moment or so. So thank you for calling in. It's nice to catch up a little bit. Again, welcome home and have a blessed one.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Take
Bye,
care.
Jeannie.